Pallavi, are you here? Oh yeah, you're here. I'm so excited to talk to Pallavi because I've heard so much about her. Um, Hi.
Hello.
I'm sorry about the little delay. It's just
It's all right. It's all right. I understand.
yeah, I'm so happy to finally have you here. I've heard so much about you from Kripali and
Ah,
Kripali, are you here? I think she is.
I'm not sure.
Okay. Yeah, so how have you
Hi,
been
so
doing?
I've been good. I wanna thank you for inviting me here and inviting me to speak. And I think it's really nice. Um, I tuned in yesterday because I was like, okay, if I'm going on tomorrow, I need to see what's happening here and I need to see what this is all about. So I tuned in yesterday, and I thought it was actually, I think it's such a nice initiative because a lot of us are at home killing time, and it's also a very difficult period for a lot of us. So I was just like, this is such a great initiative for people who are artists, for people who have stories to tell, for mental health professionals. So thank you for doing this.
I'm glad I'm doing this. It was just a random idea that came to my head while I was sitting. I was just like, I should do this. People, because I just saw people online like doing vlog and doing like tutorials and all that. I'm like, if everybody is using online as a medium to talk about things,
Platform.
then why not mental health?
Yeah,
So that's how
absolutely.
I came up with this. And
That's
when I asked
awesome.
Kripali if she wanted to be a part of this, that's when she told me about you. So
Yeah. So Kripali and I actually we worked together a few months ago, and I've actually I have some content on Kripali that I need to put out, but I just things have just been a little crazy lately, and I haven't got down to it. But yeah, Kripali's story is yet to come out on my profile. Yeah.
yeah, she's here, she's watching. So,
Yeah.
what is something you would want to talk about today, Pallavi?
You tell me what you want to talk about. So um, I was watching the earlier bit of this video when some of the earlier speakers were here, and I was just, thinking about how a lot of the things that came up were about how people are at home and don't really know how to deal with it. And I think it's interesting because even like a lot of the mental health professionals who work in this field, I'm like following them on Instagram and all of that. And I think not everyone knows how to deal with the situation because it's relatively new for everyone, I guess. You know, um, I think all of us had this notion that we had developed to a certain extent, and the world is never going to come to a standstill again. It's only like when wars were happening and things like that. But I think it's really, I think there's good and bad that's coming out of this situation. There's definitely a standstill, and everyone's had to stay at home. And I think from what I see, I think this social isolation is really hard because I think at a time like this, like we know that social support is kind of the glue that holds us all together. And a time like this, you're not really allowed to exercise that and go out and meet people. And so it is upsetting, obviously. But I think what's also interesting that you as well spoke about earlier was about how people with existing mental health conditions, it can get triggered at this point. Like if you have anxiety, depression, like do you resonate with that at all?
I actually do because every time I seek therapy, my therapist always told me to be around
Mm,
people who I feel safe with, to talk to people, to go out more. Um,
yeah,
so these were always things that my therapist told me, which I can't really do right now. So I'm just
yeah,
trying my best with other things. So
yeah,
yeah, a lot of people who have existing mental health issues, it can get to them. So yeah, that's a good topic to talk about. So is there
yeah.
anything you would want to say about that?
I mean, I feel like there are possibly two reasons. These are just my opinion on why this is a there's a possibility that this is happening. One is there's um, I've spoken about this earlier as well about how the world is seeming like a place that is not as safe now, and that things are kind of topsy-turvy. And I think a lot of people, I think everyone, no one really knows how to make sense of this. And so if you have an existing condition of anxiety or depression or panic attacks or whatever it is, it's bound to get triggered, because now, say with therapy or with medications, if you've figured out how to live with that, you're like, okay, I need to exercise, I need to eat right, I need to sleep right, and this is everything that's going to help me, and meeting my friends and whatever else. And now suddenly none of that is allowed, like you said, so the solutions that you figure out on how to kind of survive or cope with your existing mental health condition is no longer available to you. But I think the silver lining in this is actually that there are far more resources that have come out. There are so many companies that are now opening their resources for free online. They're like, you're stuck at home, we're going to give you access to our entire book collection. Or you're stuck at home, we're doing free therapy sessions. So, there are a lot of these initiatives that are coming up and that are so interesting. And I think, I think that's probably one of the reasons why your existing mental health condition is also, a lot of people's is, getting triggered. I think also, like, another thing I'd like to say is that people now suddenly have a lot of time on their hands. So, if you had things bothering you, you always, like, all of us.
Sorry, I just don't know what
That's all
happened with
right.
my phone.
That's all right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, like a lot of us, through our daily life, we're not sure how to deal with things. So we kind of push it under the rug. But I think at a time like this, when there's so much free time and, it kind of resurfaces all of that. So I think this could be like a couple of reasons why existing mental health conditions are getting triggered during this time.
So are there any tips you would like to give to people who are facing this particular problem?
Sure. So there are a few things that have helped me, and I've seen help people around me as well. Is that keeping a routine, I think, is really important, because if you're not getting the right amount of sleep, if you're not eating your meals on time, if you're not setting aside certain time for work, certain time for leisure, certain time for whatever else it is, at a time like this, when our country is going through a 21-day lockdown, it can possibly just seem like one long day or one long week, and that can be a little bit worrying, I think. So I think one of the tips is to keep a routine. I think the other way is that, and I talk about this a lot, about how moving is really, really, really important. I think at a time like this, when we're receiving so much news and there's too much like brain activity happening, and we're like so anxious and so confused about everything, and we don't know how to deal with it, and we just need to like get out of our heads. And one of the easiest way to do that is by moving. And like with our bodies, when we move, there's a lot of endorphins, a lot of neurochemicals like serotonin that are literally for our body to feel better, for our body and minds to feel better. So I think that's one. Movement is really important. I read this post about how human beings are basically like plants. We just need water and we need sunlight and all of that. And I think sunlight is another thing that's really important, because like sunlight is actually a source of vitamin D, which helps with depression, which is really interesting. So I think we're stuck inside and we're not getting enough of that. So really simple solutions is that, like, if you have a balcony, if you have a window, just make sure we're not missing out on some of our our most basic requirements, like sunlight. Just things that are as simple as that.
That's a very interesting fact. Like, I'm definitely gonna go spend more time with sunlight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It helps, yeah. And I think there are a lot of people at this time who are reaching out, which is really nice, and who don't really know like how to cope. But I think one of my like what I always tell people is that you know best how you can cope. It's not a one size fits all solution. Like if something works for me, it's probably not going to work for someone else. So I feel like it's important for everyone, myself included, everyone to just find out what keeps you sane, what keeps you happy, and figure that out for yourself. you know so yeah, that's also another tip.
Yeah, that makes sense. If something works out for one person, it's not really like necessary for the same thing to work out for another
Everyone
person.
else. Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's moreover a trial and error thing where you just try what works for you. If it doesn't, then you adapt something else. And that's what I've been trying to do. Like I tried drawing, and if I feel like,
Yeah.
oh no, this is not working out for me, I do something else. And I'm definitely gonna do the sunlight thing.
Yeah.
I mean, why
What are
not
some of the
try?
things that have been helping you and people around you? I'm curious.
Well, I'm sort of in a joint family sort of a space right now, so there isn't really a lot of movement per se that I can do. But
Mm.
I'm grateful to have my own space in this house, which I
Yeah.
really need being a musician because I always, I love having my own space. I love having
Mm.
my own this creative like at night post 12 o'clock is when my creative mind works, so I love having
Wow.
my own
Okay.
space. I'm grateful that I have that. I just try to spend, like, every time I get anxiety, like sometimes I'm just in a room of full of people, be it my family, be it anybody, and I suddenly get anxious, so I just try to move out and spend time with my dogs.
Yeah.
Dogs really help. Like even a few months back when I was at my worst, I could say, because of the health conditions. I have this condition called endometriosis,
Okay.
which
Okay.
which basically gives you chronic pain, which is, I'm much better now, but a few months back I was at my worst, and I got a dog. So
Oh
that was one thing that I
yay!
did for myself,
That's
and
awesome.
that really helped me. And having a dog with me, it changed a lot of things. It was like I was not just caring for myself, I was caring for another thing, and that made me feel responsible. It made me feel good about myself.
Yeah.
So I do that here too. I've got my dog along with me to my family house,
Oh,
and
that's
I
nice.
have two other dogs, so I just spend time with my dogs. I try
Yeah.
baking, I try cooking, I just try to keep myself busy because every
Yeah.
time I'm idle, I sit without doing anything. That's when, you start
Your
overthinking, you
thoughts.
start
Yeah.
thinking, yeah, it just starts flooding in. So
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
try to not sit in this creative space of mine when I'm not doing anything, because then it's
Ready to
not creative
create.
anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like counterproductive.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
these are some things that I've been doing that helps me. And I even
Yeah.
talk to my friends. There's this app called House Party, which everybody is
Yeah. Of
using. So I'm
course. Yeah.
just
Yeah.
trying to be on that, talking to people. Yeah, these are some things
Yeah.
I'm doing. How about you?
Yeah.
What have you been doing? How are your days? How's your daily
Um,
day like?
well, things are very different. And so my usual routine is that I'm doing my master's right now, so there is so much work on the regular. So a lot of the times I'm just like glued to my laptop because that's kind of what my course demands from me. But I think now it's so interesting moving back home because I'm always just like, um, I want to learn how to garden and I want to learn how to cook and I want to be able to devote enough time to my exercise and all of that, but it hasn't happened. And now I'm at home like, oh shit, we have 21 days. Am I actually going to utilize this time? It's so funny. But no. But like some of the things I said are about like exercise and movement and sunlight. These are some of the things that are helping me. But I feel like at a time like this, maintaining social networks is really important. Like you said, like being out with people helps your mental health. And we can't necessarily do that physically right now. But I think we probably shouldn't allow ourselves to just um, let go of those social networks because are apps like House Party or just WhatsApp and all of these other apps that allow us to stay connected virtually. So that's really nice. I also feel like I posted about this earlier, but like just deep breathing really helps, because what happens when we deep breathe, I know these things sound really simplistic, but like if you look at the science behind it and the reasoning behind it, it's so profound. So like when we deep breathe, it basically, like, we have, in psychology we learn about like the fight or flight system. So when
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, I'm sure
Mm,
you read about
yeah.
it too. So when there's a dangerous situation, you can either stay and fight it, or you can move away from that. And in both these situations, it requires a lot of energy from us. So what has happened is that humans no longer need, like, we're no longer running from our predators, but we perceive a lot of things around us as dangerous to our existence, which actually not. Which is why a lot of us have anxiety. Like, an exam is not crucial to my survival, but I can still get a panic attack before an exam. So deep breathing at this time helps. Like, the parasympathetic nervous system is basically what calms our body down, which basically makes a decision whether I need to fight or flight. So deep breathing basically tells the parasympathetic nervous system to, like, chill out, and tells like the rest of our bodies that this is not, like, you're not going to die from this, essentially. you know so it basically tells your cells that there's no need to be fighting for your survival, so you can, like, chill out a bit.
I think even the first time when my therapist told me, deep breathing and just listening to, like, she told me about an app where you just play this particular music and just deep breathe and it'll help. I was like, I don't think that's gonna help me. Like, how's that
Yeah,
gonna help me?
yeah.
And then I read about it, as you said, the scientific, like,
Explanation.
explanation behind deep
Yeah,
breathing, and I was like, this does make sense. And I think a lot
yeah,
of people need to understand that, who was watching this live, that deep breathing does help sometimes when you're just panicking, you have a breakdown, and then you're just like, what do I do? I do this a lot. I said this yesterday as well. I go in front of the mirror, I start talking to myself,
yeah,
and I just close my eyes and I take like deep breaths. And that helps me calm down, if not
yeah.
completely, at least to an extent.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
because that's, you're literally. So I watched a video the other day of this psychologist talking about how during this entire coronavirus breakdown, everyone is saying that, like, everyone is saying don't touch your face, but the psychologist was basically talking about how touching your face is your body's, like, natural mechanism to deal with stress. So apparently we have, like, pressure points all over our body, and so when we're stressed, we, like, do this, and we press, like, the sides of our nose, or we press, like, certain points of our forehead, and that actually, like, stimulates our body to, like, not panic. These are just, like, stress points that you.
Really?
Yeah, so she was like,
Wow.
that's
Can you
why
please
it's.
share this with me? I would
Yeah,
love to read
I will.
this.
And, like, how you said you started, like, baking and cooking and things like that. So these are all basically your body's natural mechanisms to engage your senses, because when you're engaging your senses, when you're using your hands, say, to garden, to cook, or you're listening to music, you're using your ears, it basically doesn't allow all your energy. I mean, this is a bit of a simplistic explanation, but it doesn't allow your entire energy to just, like, go to your brain, where you're then stuck in a loop, you know so yeah, our bodies are just more intelligent than we give it credit for.
Oh, wow, this is like completely new information, and this is so interesting. I would love to like do research on that. I was just
Yeah.
telling another speaker today, Kanchan, that I've taken up an online diploma course in
Oh,
psychology, and
yay.
I've
Yeah.
decided to complete that in this entire quarantine period. I mean, it's flexible. I can do it if I obsessively sit with it for 12 hours. I can finish it in a week.
Please
So,
don't do
uh,
that.
um, so I'm just looking forward to do that and learn new things, because I had
Yeah.
psychology back in school and I absolutely love the subject, and whatever I know is from what I studied back in
Yeah.
high school. It was one of my majors. So yeah, and all this that whatever you're telling me, it's such useful information, and
Yeah.
man, we should do this more often where I have you on board,
Yeah.
because I'm sure like you keep reading things and you'll keep sharing it with people, and
Yeah.
that's just so useful,
Yeah. I
especially in a
think a
time
lot of
like
it.
this. Sorry?
Yeah. No, I was saying, I think a lot of it also just comes from, like, experience. um, like one of my professors in college, he's one of my favorite professors, and he says that like you don't like adversity and experience are your biggest education. Like I think reading a book will only take you so much, and I feel like in the field of mental health, I am as passionate about it because uh, all of us have mental health, and all of us have mental health hurdles that we're dealing with, and that's why I really believe that mental illness isn't something that needs to be tucked away to a population that is like seriously mentally ill and having like hallucinations and delusions. Literally, like every single person has physical health, just like that, every single person has mental health. Whether you have mental illness or not is a different conversation, but everyone has like mental health hurdles, you know?
Yeah, that makes sense. And I think a lot of people even spoke today about how if you have a cold or if you have a cough or if you have a fever, you go to a doctor, then why not for mental health
Mental
problems? I mean,
health,
it's
yeah.
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 So yeah, one more question I have to you. How
Hmm.
exactly would you encourage people to seek mental help? Like go to a professional? Like, is there something you would want to tell people?
So, I may not have the answer that you're looking for because even though, like, I'm training to be a therapist myself, I truly believe that therapy is not the only way to seek mental health support.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like therapy in itself it's a very like westernized concept. It's also a fairly privileged concept to think that you have to have a certain amount of money to go to a therapist every single week and
Yeah.
just work on yourself. I feel like a lot of people, not only in India but around the world, don't have the privilege to that. And also, therapy, like therapy is a process where you're probably not going to see change in a week or 2 weeks. So for people to stick it out for months or even years, uh, is like it's hard, and it's something like mental health professionals have to deal with. So I feel like also in my course we learn a lot about like faith healing and things like that, about how different people have different ways that they recover from their circumstances. So, for a lot of people, going to the temple is in some way a form of therapy. For a lot of people, exercising is a way to release that anger, frustration, whatever it is. Although I do believe therapy gets to the root of your issues and helps you like change your patterns of thinking, I wouldn't say like everyone has to go for therapy because I know that's a very like ideal
Yeah.
scenario.
That's actually an interesting topic to talk about, like what to do when you can't afford therapy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and it's very interesting because like before I started my masters, I was working for an NGO called the
Mm-hmm.
Banyan, and they basically offer mental health support to homeless individuals who live on the street, who
Wow.
who are like daily wage workers, immigrant workers, just people who cannot afford therapy, you know and that's not to say like someone's problems are more that because you're facing poverty your mental health issues are more important or less important than people who can afford therapy. It's just that whether it's more or less or whatever it is, that everyone should have access to mental health services.
Yeah.
And if they don't, luckily for us, there are other things that help with mental health. Like if you go to like a rural area and be like, yo, I'm giving you free therapy, no one's gonna come. Nobody believes in therapy over there,
Yeah.
so I think it's also extremely context specific, and it's not, like I said earlier, it's not like a one size fits all, this is going to work for everyone. Everyone needs therapy. I started out professionally, I started out with that mindset, but the more I'm learning and reading, the more I realize that's a very like linear, like I have blinders on.
Yeah.
It's a very linear perspective of mental health.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a very interesting insight towards mental health. Like what you said, go to rural areas, go to places where they don't even know that such things exist and that they
Yeah.
can go seek help from mental professionals. So, yeah, that's an interesting topic to talk about. We should definitely do another session talking
Yeah,
about this, about what to do, what not to when you can't afford mental health. Because I
yeah,
do personally even know a lot of people who keep saying that their parents are not ready to financially fund
mm,
them to seek
yeah,
mental health, and they just don't know what to do. And in like places like that, I don't even know what to say to people.
yeah,
So
yeah. But luckily
yeah,
for
they
us,
should.
I think there are a lot of like organizations and helplines that are willing to help like completely free of cost, or at a very, very subsidized cost, you know. So luckily for us, there are those options that we can, you know, like use if financial resources are an issue.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Wow. Then, does anyone have any questions for Pallavi? We've
uh,
spoken quite a lot of new things. I think every person I've spoken to today, we've spoken about different things, and it's been really knowledgeable. Like I've learned a lot of things, like a lot of new facts, a lot of new techniques, a lot of, stories to which I heard.
yeah.
So if anyone has anything for Pallavi, if they want to ask something, you can ask it
Oh,
here.
so
There's this small
Serish
question
said,
box here.
Serish said bare feet movement is more advisable. It helps regulate endocrine system and thereby reduce a lot of mood and sleep problems. That's interesting. Walking
Oh,
around
I did not
barefoot
read that.
or doing something barefoot. How to deal with rumors that circulate regarding COVID-19? Okay, that's a really good question actually because I feel like there's so much information going around and
Yeah,
there's so much terrible news that's going around and a lot of it is just crap. Um,
yeah,
but so I read the World Health Organization put out like a document the other day and I read it and it said that at a time like this, any kind of news is likely to be bad news, and so you reduce your intake of news to say, I will watch news only for half an hour, or I will watch the news only for 45 minutes. And then in that time, you're like, okay, I'm probably going to freak out and get anxious during this time, but it's only during this time that I'll consume this news, right? And another thing about news is choosing also to consume the positive news. At during this crisis, there's also people who have recovered. Sure, the health system is not equipped to deal with this. There are a lot of migrant workers that don't know what to do. There are a lot of homeless people who are left out in the open, and it is a saddening situation. But if we only pay attention to the saddening news, then we are going to get very, very sad.
yeah.
and
And
that's
another thing that Neha Iyer mentioned earlier is just remind yourself that this is temporary. It's all gonna be okay in a while. It might take a long time. It might take 21 days. It might be longer than that. You
longer
never
than
know, but
that,
it
yeah.
still is temporary. Like it will pass. Just do your role. I think your role here is to take care of yourself, take care of people around you, stay home,
Yeah,
stay safe, not be too adventurous and try to go out because
yeah, absolutely
that
not.
clearly will not help. So yeah, just
Yeah,
remind yourself that it's temporary. I myself read a lot of these stories, like stories in the sense every time I open Google, the first thing automatically that appears is coronavirus news. And every day it's like, oh, this death toll increased, the number of deaths in India increased. Yesterday night, before sleeping, not sleeping in a sense, at around 1 o'clock,
before your
I read
creative
something.
music space. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
precisely. So I read 179 new cases in India, and I was like, oh my God, this thing might just take like four,
A
five
long
months, or maybe
time.
more than
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think
So,
it's also. Sorry, go ahead.
no, no, you were saying?
Yeah, I was saying that also, like, I was saying that it's actually like with this thing with okay, say it's like right now it's 21 days and it's also the time where schools are out, colleges are out. It's possible that a lot of families would have planned vacations, planned your downtime at this time. Um, and I just want to say that it's like it's okay to grieve that, Like if you are now, even though the world around you is possibly like a sad place, um, and you feel shitty like grieving your vacation or something like that, it's still okay to just be like, I had this plan and this is what I wanted, and it's not going to happen anymore, not for the next
Yeah.
21 days or not for the next few months. Like none of us know what's happening with this. So to just be able to like identify what is bothering you and then just like sit with that emotion and work with that emotion has really helped me, at least.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah. Okay, let's see if there are any more. Are there any questions?
I love looking at this Instagram page called Good News Movement. It shares a ton of positive news. Okay, I'll
Ah,
definitely
thank you,
try that.
Tara. That's nice. Yeah. Okay, also,
How to start with meditation? Somebody's asked that.
how to start with meditation? Well, online there are a lot of um, like guided meditation pages, and you actually now have meditation for different things, like meditation for stress, meditation for anxiety, meditation for whatever else. Um, and like you start with a really small amount of time. Like the other day I meditated with my dad and he could sit with me for like 3 minutes and I was like, that's so adorable, Pa. I can do something better than you can. It was so funny. But no, so like starting with really small amounts of time and then gradually increasing, just like any other activity, to start small and then take like small steps towards it. But also, yeah, I think figuring out why you want to meditate and set that intention for how is this going to help me. Like if you're doing it just because meditation helps people and so I should get on this bandwagon, then I don't know, you may not be motivated enough to meditate. But if you know like why you want to meditate, it might help. It's just like a thought.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that makes sense. I
Yeah.
don't think there are any other questions. Do you guys have any other questions for Pallavi before we end this session? Please ask. If you feel hesitant to ask here or talk about your mental health here, you can definitely reach out to her or me. I also have made this group chat where the intention was to make it a safe space and discuss like a
That's
community. I'll
nice.
definitely add you there, Pallavi, and if
Yeah.
anyone else wants to be a part of that, just
Yeah.
please message me if you're
But
not
yeah.
like if you feel issues in messaging here,
Yeah.
asking anything.
Yeah, guys, absolutely.
But
Like, if you feel like this is a public platform and people are
yeah,
watching and you don't want to message from your account, then you can like feel free to just reach out to me at my account. I also like share tips on how to deal with anxiety and stress and whatever else, and I'm open to answering your questions if you DM me. So, if you
yes,
want any
please.
help at all, then you can reach out to me there. It's not an issue.
For sure. Thank you so much, Pallavi, for
Okay.
being here.
Thank
I'm
you.
so
Thank you for
glad
doing this.
Kripali told
Oh,
me about it.
also wait, I wanna. Is this? Am I the last speaker?
Yeah.
Okay. So since we're ending here, I think it would be really nice for you to like